S.A.G.E. I'm Athens.
I'm Jerusalem.
And this is a place where we talk about geography and history. And we're proud for our premiere to present two of our best employees. We have Rome and Johannesburg talking about the moon landing. Without further ado, have fun.
Hello. Well, all right. Welcome to week 7 of S.A.G.E. Today we are going to be talking about the first human moon landing in 1969. Without further ado, Robert, start us off.
The moon is 238,900 miles away from Earth. It takes 3 days to get to the moon. Only 12 human beings have ever walked on the moon. All 12 are American. They landed on the moon in 6 separate landings. One of each of these landings, there were 3 crew members, but only 2 of the crew members would get to walk out on the moon, while the 3rd crew member would stay on board to command the module. The first human on the moon was Neil Armstrong on July 20th, 1969. The United States is the only country to have landed people on the moon, and all those landings happened between 1969 and 1972. The reason we haven't been to the moon in 50 years is because it is very expensive. Also, in 1969, the U.S. was in a space race with the Soviet Union. At the time, the U.S. was worried that the Soviets would get to the moon first, and they wanted to be first. That kind of motivation led to the U.S. effort to be the first on the moon. In today's dollars, NASA spent $264 billion between 1960 and 1972. But NASA is once again trying to get to the moon and establish a long-term presence there. The reason is that by getting to the moon, it is one step closer to getting to Mars, which is now the ultimate goal. A mission to Mars with humans is even more difficult to the moon because it takes 7 to 8 months to get there, and then you have to stay there for 15 months before the planets are properly aligned to make the journey back. Now, Rome, take it away.
Thank you. So when the first humans had landed in the moon, that was just under 10 years after there was actually the first landing on the moon, which came in September of 1959, and the first humans on the moon was in July of 1969. And then, so it was the astronauts Neil Armstrong and Edwin Aldrin were the 2 humans who had landed on the moon. And then approximately 6.5 hours later, Armstrong walked on the moon, being the first person to physically walk on the moon. And well, as you know, the famous quote, that's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind. And this was barely, at the time in the beginning of the 1960s, approximately May of 1961, President JFK had made a goal of landing of officially landing a man on the moon by the end of the 1960s in that decade, and they did manage to achieve that. Although unfortunately JFK was not alive to witness that, as you know. And then the final mission of the Apollo 17 was in 1972, 3 years after this had first happened.
To get to the moon, a spacecraft has the challenge of first leaping Earth's gravity. The only way to do that is with a rocket, which, unlike a jet, can continue accelerating even in a vacuum. Then, as you get closer to the moon, the spacecraft will be drawn towards the moon with increasing speed because of the gravity of the moon. To land without breaking apart, the spacecraft has to slow down to 99 miles an hour. If it does, it will have what is called a hard landing. But if you have humans on board, it has to slow down to a very slow speed to have a soft landing so humans can survive. When you leave the moon, the spacecraft has to escape the gravity of the moon. This also is a challenge. One of the big hurdles in the first mission to the moon was how to recenter the Earth's atmosphere without overheating the spacecraft. So going to the moon has many specific scientific challenges, in addition to the large amounts of money. The moon landing by Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin was watched by 500 million people around the world. Their lunar module was called Eagle, and it landed in a place they called the Sea of Tranquility. Armstrong later shared that the landing was his biggest concern because there was so many unknowns, and there were 1,000 things that could go wrong. As he climbed down the ladder of the module, he made the statement, as Rome just said, "That's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind." He and Aldrin explored the surface for 2.5 hours, collecting samples and taking photos.
Yeah, in the U.S., they are the only country who have ever done this. The Soviet has never successfully conducted a mission to the moon. But as he said, they haven't gone back to the moon in actually almost 50 years, as the last time they departed the lunar surface was December of 1972, and now it's October 2022, so. So yeah, do you have anything more, or?
They left behind on the moon an American flag, a patch honoring a crew member who had died, and a writing that said, "Here men from the planet Earth first set foot upon the moon. July 1969 AD. We came in peace for all mankind."
Ladies and gentlemen, before we go, we'd like to thank our camera crew, Barcelona and
Yes, thanks for
Yerdaman.
watching. Like and subscribe.
And comment.
Thank you. Thank you. Thanks for watching. See you next time. Salutations.
Cheers.
Peace.
Outro music.
Peace. Outro.